The whole courtroom went silent when little Kofi walked up to the big wooden table where his billionaire father sat with 5 fancy lawyers. The 9-year-old boy looked so small next to all those powerful people in expensive suits. His father, Marcus Wellington, had not seen him for 3 whole years. Now Kofi was here to fight for something that would shock everyone in that room. The judge looked down at the little boy and asked, "Son, what do you want to tell us today?" Kofi took a deep breath and said words that made grown men cry. "Your Honor, I want to give away all my daddy's money to help other kids like me." Marcus Wellington was the richest man in Lagos, Nigeria. He owned big hotels and fancy cars and had more money than most countries. But 3 years ago, he left his family to marry a younger woman. He forgot all about his son Kofi and his loving wife Amara. Kofi lived with his mama in a small house near the market. Amara worked day and night selling vegetables to buy food and pay for school. Sometimes they had no money for dinner. Sometimes Kofi wore the same shirt for many days because Mama could not buy new clothes. But Amara never complained. She always told Kofi, "My son, you are more precious than all the gold in the world." Every night Kofi would look at the stars and wonder why his daddy left them. He would ask his mama, "Did daddy stop loving us?" Amara would hug him tight and say, "Your daddy lost his way, but love never dies, my child." One day a man in a black suit came to their small house. He gave Amara some papers and said, "Mrs. Wellington, your husband wants a divorce. He says you can have nothing. Sign these papers or he will take you to court." Amara started crying. She knew Marcus had powerful lawyers who could take away even their small house. But then little Kofi surprised everyone. He took his mama's hand and said, "Mama, let them take us to court. I have something to tell Daddy." The courtroom was full of reporters and cameras. Marcus Wellington sat with his 5 best lawyers. They all wore expensive suits and carried big briefcases. Marcus looked very confident. He thought this would be easy. His lawyers told him, "Sir, we will win this case in 1 hour. Your wife will get nothing." But when Kofi walked into the courtroom, something changed. People started whispering. Here was this tiny boy walking bravely toward his billionaire father who had abandoned him. Kofi wore his best shirt, which had a small hole near the pocket. His shoes were old, but Mama had cleaned them until they shined. Judge Adebayo was known as the toughest judge in Lagos. He had seen many cases, but never one like this. When he saw little Kofi, his eyes became soft. "Young man, why are you here today?" he asked gently. Kofi stood up straight and looked at his father. Marcus felt uncomfortable. He had not seen his son for 3 years. The boy had grown taller. His eyes looked older and sadder. For a moment, Marcus remembered teaching Kofi how to ride a bicycle. He remembered bedtime stories and goodnight hugs. But then he pushed those memories away. "Your Honor," Kofi said in a clear voice, "I want to make a deal with my daddy." The whole courtroom gasped. Marcus looked confused. His lawyers whispered among themselves. What could a 9-year-old boy possibly offer a billionaire? Judge Adebayo leaned forward. "What kind of deal, son?" Kofi walked closer to his father's table. Marcus could see tears in the boy's eyes, but Kofi did not cry. "Daddy," he said, "I know you have forgotten us. I know you have a new wife and new life. But I want to make you an offer." Marcus finally spoke. "Kofi, you should not be here. This is grown-up business." But Kofi did not back down. "Daddy, I learned something in school. When someone dies, all their money goes to their children. That means someday all your money will be mine, right?" The lawyers nodded. According to law, Kofi would inherit everything when Marcus died. Then Kofi said something that shocked everyone. "Daddy, I want to give you all that money right now. But I have 3 conditions," Marcus laughed. "Son, you cannot give away money you do not have yet." But Judge Adebayo was interested. "Young man, what are your 3 conditions?" Kofi took a deep breath. "First condition, Daddy must give Mama enough money so she never has to work in the hot sun again. She is tired and her hands hurt from carrying heavy vegetables. Everyone in the courtroom looked at Amara. She was crying quietly. She had worked so hard for 3 years to take care of Kofi. Second condition, Kofi continued. Daddy must build a school for children whose parents left them. There are many kids like me who feel sad and alone. Now people in the courtroom were crying. Even the tough lawyers had tears in their eyes. Third condition, Kofi said, looking straight at his father. Daddy must promise to visit me once every month, not because he has to, but because he wants to. I miss my daddy so much. The courtroom was completely silent. You could hear people breathing. Marcus felt like his heart was breaking. His lawyers did not know what to say. But then Marcus became angry. This is foolish. Kofi, you are just a child. You do not understand money or business. Kofi's voice became stronger. Daddy, I understand more than you think. Money cannot buy love. Money cannot make a person good. You have so much money, but you are not happy. I can see it in your eyes. Suddenly an old woman stood up in the back of the courtroom. She was Marcus's mother, Grandmother Kemi. Marcus had not spoken to her in 2 years, because she did not approve of his new wife. My son, Grandmother Kemi said, walking slowly toward the front. This child speaks more wisdom than all your lawyers. I taught you better than this. Marcus stood up. Mama, please sit down. This does not concern you. But Grandmother Kemi kept walking. It concerns me because you are my son and Kofi is my grandson. For 3 years, I have watched this child grow up without his father. For 3 years, I have seen Amara struggle alone. You have brought shame to our family name. She reached Kofi and put her hand on his shoulder. This boy has more honor in his little finger than you have in your whole body. The judge was watching everything carefully. He had never seen a case like this in 30 years. Then Grandmother Kemi said something that changed everything. Marcus, if you do not accept this child's offer, I will tell everyone in Lagos about the secret I have kept for you. Marcus turned pale. Mama, what are you talking about? The secret. About where your first $1 million came from, she said loudly. The secret about the partnership you stole from your best friend Peter. All the lawyers started talking at once. The reporters were writing everything down. Marcus realized his reputation could be destroyed. Grandmother Kemi continued. 20 years ago, my son cheated his business partner, Peter Okafor, out of 2 million naira. That money became the start of his empire. Peter died in poverty, while Marcus became rich from stolen money. The courtroom erupted in noise. Everyone was talking and shouting. Judge Adebayo banged his gavel. Order in the court. Marcus felt trapped. If this story came out, his business would be ruined. People would stop trusting him. His new wife might leave him too. But then something unexpected happened. Little Kofi walked over to his grandmother and whispered something in her ear. Grandmother. Kemi looked surprised. Grandmother, please sit down, Kofi said gently. This is not about the past. This is about the future. He turned to his father. Daddy, I do not care about your mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. I just want my family back together. Marcus felt tears coming to his eyes. How could this child be so forgiving when adults could not forgive? But Daddy, Kofi continued, if you cannot love us, then at least help other people. Use your money to make the world better. That is what Mama taught me. Marcus looked around the courtroom. He saw his mother crying. He saw his ex-wife Amara, who had loved him for 15 years. He saw his son, who still called him Daddy, even after 3 years of abandonment. Then Marcus remembered his own father, who had died when Marcus was young. He remembered how much it hurt to grow up without a daddy. Now he was doing the same thing to Kofi. Suddenly, Marcus could not breathe. All the pain and guilt he had pushed away for 3 years came rushing back. He fell into his chair and started crying like a baby. I am sorry, he whispered. I am so sorry, my son. The whole courtroom was silent, except for Marcus crying. His fancy lawyers did not know what to do. They had never seen their powerful client break down like this. Kofi walked over to his father and did something that shocked everyone. He climbed onto Marcus's lap and hugged him tight. "Daddy, it is okay." Kofi whispered, "I forgive you. I love you no matter what." Now everyone in the courtroom was crying. The judge was crying. The lawyers were crying. The reporters were crying. Even the security guards had tears in their eyes. Marcus held his son close and realized what he had lost. For 3 years he had been chasing money and success, but he had lost the most important thing in the world, his family. "Kofi," Marcus said through his tears, "I accept your deal. All 3 conditions." The judge smiled for the first time that day. "Mr. Wellington, do you really agree to provide for your ex-wife, build a school for abandoned children, and visit your son monthly?" "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus said, "but I want to add one more condition of my own." Everyone waited to hear what he would say. "I want Amara and Kofi to come home. I want us to be a family again. I will ask my new wife for a divorce. She never loved me anyway. She only loved my money," Amara gasped. "Marcus, are you sure?" Marcus looked at the woman who had loved him through good times and bad times. "Amara, I have been a fool. Can you ever forgive me?" Before Amara could answer, Kofi spoke up. "Mama always says love means forgiving people when they make mistakes." Amara walked over to Marcus and Kofi. "I forgave you a long time ago, my husband. I was just waiting for you to come home." The 3 of them hugged while everyone in the courtroom clapped and cried happy tears. Judge Adebayo banged his gavel. "Case dismissed." This family has found their way back to each other. 6 months later, Lagos had its first school for children whose parents had abandoned them. The Kofi Wellington School for Hope had beautiful classrooms and a big playground and the best teachers. In Nigeria, Marcus kept his promise. He visited his family every week, not just once a month. Soon he realized he wanted to be home every day. He sold his big mansion and moved back to a smaller house where they could be happy together. Amara never had to sell vegetables in the hot sun again. Instead, she became the principal of the new school. She helped other children who felt lost and alone, just like Kofi had felt. Grandmother Kemi moved in with them and cooked the best jollof rice in Lagos. She was so proud of her grandson who had saved their family with wisdom beyond his years. The most beautiful part was that Marcus and Amara fell in love all over again. They remembered why they had chosen each other 15 years before. Love had never died. It was just waiting to be remembered. As for little Kofi, he became famous all over Africa as the boy who outsmarted billionaire lawyers with nothing but love and forgiveness. But he did not care about being famous. He was just happy to have his daddy home for bedtime stories again. Every night before Kofi went to sleep, Marcus would tuck him in and say, "Son, you taught me that money means nothing without love. You are worth more than all my businesses combined." And Kofi would smile and say, "Daddy, I learned that from Mama. She taught me that love is the most powerful thing in the world. Sometimes the strongest weapon is not anger or revenge. Sometimes the strongest weapon is a child's heart full of love and forgiveness. Sometimes it takes a 9-year-old to teach grown-ups how to be human again." The Wellington family learned that being rich means having people who love you, not just having money in the bank. They learned that home is not a big house with fancy furniture. Home is wherever your family is together. And in Lagos, Nigeria, people still tell the story of little Kofi, who walked into a courtroom and changed 3 lives forever with nothing but courage, love, and wisdom that came straight from his pure heart. The boy who gave away a fortune to get back something more valuable than money, his family. 10 years had passed since that extraordinary day in Judge Adebayo's courtroom, and Lagos had changed in ways that even little Kofi could never have imagined. The boy who once stood before billionaire lawyers in worn shoes and a shirt with holes had grown into a 19-year-old young man whose name was whispered with reverence across not just Nigeria, but throughout Africa and beyond. The morning sun cast long shadows across the campus of Kofi Wellington University, the magnificent institution that had grown from the small school for abandoned children into West Africa's most prestigious center of learning. What started as a promise to help children whose parents had left them had blossomed into something far greater, a beacon of hope that attracted students from every corner of the continent. Marcus Wellington stood at his office window on the top floor of the administration building, watching as hundreds of young people hurried across the beautiful courtyards below. At 55, he looked older but infinitely more peaceful than the desperate billionaire who had sat in that courtroom a decade ago. His hair had turned silver at the temples, and gentle lines around his eyes spoke of countless nights spent reading bedtime stories, attending school plays, and simply being present for the family he had almost lost forever. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Papa, are you ready for the ceremony?" Marcus turned to see Kofi in the doorway, tall and handsome in his graduation robes. The young man had inherited his father's sharp intelligence and his mother's compassionate heart, but there was something else in his eyes, a depth of wisdom that seemed to come from having learned life's most important lessons before most children learn to tie their shoes. "Almost, my son," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I was just thinking about how far we've all come." Kofi walked over to stand beside his father at the window. "Do you ever regret it, Papa? Giving up the old life for this one?" Marcus wrapped his arm around his son's shoulders, marveling as he always did at how tall Kofi had grown. "My boy, the only thing I regret is how many years I wasted thinking money could fill the emptiness in my heart. You gave me back my life that day in the courtroom. You gave me back my soul." Down in the courtyard, they could see Amara directing the setup for the graduation ceremony. At 43, she had become one of Nigeria's most respected educators. But to Marcus, she was still the beautiful woman who had waited for him to find his way home. Her work with abandoned children had expanded into a nationwide network of support centers, and she was frequently invited to speak at international conferences about child welfare. "There's something I need to tell you before the ceremony begins," Kofi said quietly. "I've made a decision about my future." Marcus felt his heart skip. Over the years, everyone had assumed Kofi would take over the family business empire, which had grown even larger since Marcus had begun using it primarily for charitable purposes. The Wellington Foundation now operated schools, hospitals, and community centers across 12 African nations. "Tell me, son," Kofi took a deep breath. "Harvard Business School accepted me. Full scholarship. I could go to America, study there, come back and help run our foundation with all the latest knowledge and connections." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's a tremendous opportunity, Kofi. You should be proud." "But I'm not going," Kofi continued, his voice growing stronger. "I'm staying here in Lagos. I'm going to work with Mama at the children's centers. Not as a manager or director, but on the ground, with the kids who are living through what I lived through." Marcus studied his son's face, seeing the same determined expression that had appeared in that courtroom 10 years ago. "Why, son? You could change the world from a position of power." "Papa, you taught me something when you chose family over fortune. Real change doesn't come from the top down. It comes from one heart touching another. These children don't need another wealthy benefactor making decisions about their lives from an office in Abuja or Lagos. They need someone who understands their pain, who can look them in the eye and say, 'I know how you feel because I felt it too.'" Before Marcus could respond, Grandmother Kemi's voice echoed up from the courtyard below. Even at 82, her voice could still carry across a football field when she wanted everyone's attention. "Marcus, Kofi, stop hiding up there like shy goats and come help with these chairs." Father and son looked at each other and burst into laughter. Some things never changed. Grandmother Kemi had become the unofficial mother of every child who passed through their programs, and her jollof rice was still legendary throughout Lagos. She ruled the family with gentle authority and had never let success change their values. As they headed downstairs to join the ceremony preparations, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. The Wellington business empire had indeed grown, but in ways he never could have imagined. Instead of hotels and luxury developments, they now built schools and hospitals. Instead of maximizing profits, they maximized the number of lives they could touch. The legal battle that had started it all seemed like a lifetime ago, but Marcus knew that Judge Adebayo still told the story to young lawyers, reminding them that the law was meant to serve justice, not just the powerful. The old judge had become a regular visitor to their family gatherings, claiming that watching the Wellingtons had restored his faith in humanity. The graduation ceremony was set to be the largest in the university's history. 350 students would receive their degrees, and each one had a scholarship story behind them. Some were former street children who had been taken in by their programs. Others were brilliant minds from poor families who never could have afforded higher education. Still others were young people who had overcome tremendous obstacles: abuse, abandonment, poverty, discrimination. As the ceremony began, Marcus sat in the front row between Amara and grandmother Kemi, watching with pride as Kofi delivered the valedictorian speech. The young man spoke without notes, his words carrying the same simple power that had moved the courtroom to tears a decade earlier. 10 years ago, Kofi began, his voice carrying clearly across the packed stadium. My father taught me that success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you give away. My mother taught me that love can heal any wound. My grandmother taught me that wisdom comes from understanding your place in the larger story of your people. He paused, scanning the crowd of graduates and their families. But the most important lesson I learned came from you, my fellow students, my brothers and sisters who have shown me that every person carries within them the power to change the world. Not through grand gestures or dramatic speeches, but through the quiet courage of refusing to let pain turn into bitterness, of choosing hope when hope seems impossible. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as he listened to his son address the crowd. This young man, who had once stood trembling before a judge's bench, now spoke with the authority of someone who had lived through darkness and chosen to become light. We are not defined by where we came from, Kofi continued, but by where we choose to go. We are not limited by the circumstances of our birth, but empowered by the strength we find in overcoming those circumstances. Today, as we graduate, we make a promise, not just to succeed, but to remember those still struggling in the darkness we've left behind. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, but Kofi wasn't finished. I want to tell you about a little girl I met last week at one of our children's centers. Her name is Fatima. She's 7 years old, and she asked me a question that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She said, "Brother Kofi, do you think my daddy will ever come back for me?" And I realized that the question isn't whether her father will return. The question is whether we will be the family she needs until he does, and even if he never does. Now even the graduates were crying, but Kofi's voice grew stronger. So here is my challenge to each of you as you leave this place. Be someone's hope. Be someone's second chance. Be someone's proof that love is stronger than abandonment, that kindness is more powerful than cruelty, that forgiveness can heal what seems forever broken. As the ceremony concluded and families gathered for photographs and celebrations, Marcus found himself approached by a middle-aged man he didn't recognize. "Mr. Wellington?" "My name is Peter Okafor Jr." Marcus felt his blood run cold. He immediately recognized the name. This had to be the son of the business partner he had cheated 20 years ago. The secret that grandmother Kemi had threatened to reveal in that courtroom. "Mr. Okafor," Marcus said carefully. Please," the man interrupted, raising his hand. "I know what happened between you and my father. He told me before he died. But I also know what you've built here, what your family has given to thousands of children." My father would have been proud to see his loss turn into so much gain for others. Marcus stared at the man, hardly believing what he was hearing. I brought you something, Peter Jr. continued, pulling out a worn photograph. This is my father. With your son at the Children's Center last month, just before my father passed away. He had been volunteering there for 3 years. He said working with those children helped heal his heart. Marcus looked at the photograph with wonder. There was old Peter Okafor, the man he had wronged decades ago, sitting on a bench with his arm around a young boy, both of them laughing at something outside the camera's view. He forgave you long ago, Mr. Wellington. He said anyone who could raise a son like Kofi must have learned the true meaning of wealth. As the sun set over Lagos that evening, the Wellington family gathered in their modest home for their traditional celebration dinner. The house wasn't large or fancy. They had chosen comfort over grandeur, warmth over impressiveness. The walls were covered with photographs of children they had helped, awards from charitable organizations, and family memories that spanned the difficult early years through to this triumphant day. Kofi sat at the piano, playing the gentle melody. That had become their family song, a simple tune Amara had hummed to him during those hard years when they had nothing but each other. Marcus watched his son's fingers dance across the keys and marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. Tell us the story, grandmother, called out one of the younger children, a girl named Blessing whom they had recently welcomed into their extended family. Grandmother Kemi settled into her favorite chair, her eyes twinkling with the same mischief that had sustained her through 8 decades of life. Which story, my child? The story about the little boy who changed everything, Blessing said, curling up at the old woman's feet. Ah, that story, Grandmother Kemi smiled, glancing at Kofi with pride. Well, once upon a time, there was a little boy who learned that the biggest power in the world isn't money or anger or revenge. The biggest power is love and forgiveness, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when you're small and scared and everyone else seems so much bigger and stronger than you. As she began the familiar tale, Marcus reached for Amara's hand, and Kofi moved from the piano to sit with them. Outside, the sounds of Lagos continued, a bustling city of millions full of struggle and hope, poverty and dreams. But inside their home, surrounded by the family they had almost lost and found again, the Wellingtons knew they had discovered the secret that money could never buy. They had learned that being truly wealthy meant having people who loved you, not for what you could give them, but for who you were. They had learned that home wasn't a place marked by expensive furniture or impressive addresses. Home was wherever your family chose to love each other, forgive each other, and face the future together. And in Lagos, Nigeria, people still tell the story of little Kofi Wellington, the boy who walked into a courtroom with nothing but courage and love, and walked out with everything that truly mattered. His story became a reminder that sometimes the smallest voice can speak the loudest truth, and that love, in the end, really is the most powerful force in the world.